What was the first war ever fought? Prehistoric landscape at dawn. Mist clings to ancient valleys. 15,000 years ago, long before pyramids pierced the sky or cities sprawled across continents, before the first word was ever written or the first wheel ever turned, something happened in the shadows of prehistory that would echo through every generation of human existence. In this forgotten place, beneath layers of time and sediment, lies evidence of humanity's first great tragedy. Not a natural disaster. Not a cosmic catastrophe. But something far more chilling, something we did to ourselves. In 1964, deep in the heart of Sudan, archaeologist Fred Wendorf made a discovery that would rewrite our understanding of human nature. At Cemetery 117, near Jebel Sahaba, he uncovered something that had been hidden for nearly 14,000 years. 59 human skeletons. Men, women, children. But these weren't victims of accident or disease. 24 of them bore the unmistakable marks of violence. Stone points embedded in spines. Arrowheads lodged in skulls. Wounds that could only come from one source. This wasn't a single moment of rage. This wasn't an isolated incident. The evidence tells a more disturbing story. These people had been attacked multiple times. Some wounds had healed, only to be reopened. Others had fought back, their own weapons scattered among the remains. This was war. And it may have been the very first. To understand why our ancestors first turned weapons against each other, we must journey back to a world on the edge of transformation. 14,000 years ago, Earth was emerging from the grip of the last glacial maximum. For millennia, ice had locked away vast quantities of water. Sea levels were 400 feet lower. Continents were connected by land bridges that no longer exist. And in the heart of what we now call the Sahara Desert, there was paradise. The Sahara was not a desert then, but a vast savanna teeming with life. Elephants trumpeted through acacia groves. Hippos wallowed in crystal-clear rivers. And humans thrived like never before. But this abundance carried within it the seeds of something darker. For the first time in human history, there was enough food, enough resources, to support large, permanent settlements. Our ancestors were no longer nomadic wanderers. They had something precious, something worth defending. They had territory. They had possessions. The bones don't lie. They tell us exactly how our ancestors died, and perhaps more importantly, how they lived in those final, violent years. Look closely at these remains. This individual, a woman in her 30s, has a stone point embedded between her ribs. But examine her bones more carefully. Here, on her left arm, the fracture pattern tells us something remarkable. This wound healed completely before her death. She had been in battle before. She had survived. She had continued to live, to love, to raise children, only to face violence again. And she wasn't alone. Nearly half of these individuals show evidence of previous conflicts. These weren't random attacks by strangers passing through. This was systematic. This was sustained. This was warfare as we recognize it today, groups of humans organized against other groups, fighting repeatedly over resources, territory, or survival itself. The weapons themselves tell their own story. These aren't the crude tools of desperate scavengers. They're sophisticated hunting instruments turned toward a darker purpose. Projectile points designed to pierce thick animal hide work just as well against human flesh. Humanity's greatest innovation, the ability to kill at a distance, had found its ultimate application. Against ourselves. But why? Why did these early humans, living in apparent abundance, turn to warfare? The answer lies written in the climate records, preserved in ice cores and sediment layers. Around 13,000 years ago, Earth's climate began to shift dramatically. The Younger Dryas period was beginning, a sudden return to near-glacial conditions that would last for over 1,000 years. In a geological instant, the abundant grasslands began to fail. Rivers that had flowed for thousands of years started to disappear. The animals that humans depended on migrated away or died off entirely. For the first time, humans faced something their nomadic ancestors never had to endure: the collapse of a homeland they couldn't simply abandon. They had built permanent settlements, developed complex social structures, accumulated possessions they couldn't easily carry. Stay and starve, or fight for what remained. We can only imagine what that first organized battle looked like. But the archaeological evidence gives us clues, fragments of a story written in stone and bone. Picture it: two communities, once perhaps allied, now desperate. The river that had sustained both groups for generations is failing. Fish are dying. The game has moved on. Children are hungry. Negotiations have failed. Threats have been made. Now, in the grey light of dawn, families that might once have shared meals prepare to kill each other. This isn't the romanticized warfare of later civilizations. There are no armor, no banners, no rules of engagement. This is raw, primal conflict. Survival at its most basic level. The clash is over in minutes. When the dust settles, dozens lie dead or dying. The survivors tend to wounds, gather their dead, and face a terrible truth: this will not be the last time. The first war wasn't born from ambition or ideology. That first conflict at Jebel Sahaba was just the beginning. Archaeological evidence shows that warfare spread like a contagion across prehistoric humanity. Sites across Europe, Asia, and the Americas all tell similar stories of increasing violence as the Ice Age ended and resources became scarce. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle. The Talheim death pit in Germany, 34 individuals killed by stone axes 7,000 years ago. The Crow Creek massacre in South Dakota, 500 people slaughtered 700 years ago. The pattern repeats across continents and millennia. We like to think of war as a recent invention, a product of civilization gone wrong. But the evidence suggests otherwise. Warfare may be as fundamental to human nature as language, art, or love. We are a species that learn to kill our own kind not by accident, but by necessity. We can only imagine what that first organized battle looked like. But the archaeological evidence gives us clues, fragments of a story written in stone and bone. Picture it: two communities, once perhaps allied, now desperate. The river that had sustained both groups for generations is failing. Fish are dying. The game has moved on. Children are hungry. Negotiations have failed. Threats have been made. Now, in the grey light of dawn, families that might once have shared meals prepare to kill each other. This isn't the romanticized warfare of later civilizations. There are no armor, no banners, no rules of engagement. This is raw, primal conflict. Survival at its most basic level. The clash is over in minutes. When the dust settles, dozens lie dead or dying. The survivors tend to wounds, gather their dead, and face a terrible truth: this will not be the last time. The first war wasn't born from ambition or ideology. It was born from desperation, from the cruel mathematics of scarcity. When there isn't enough for everyone, someone must have nothing. And yet, here we are. 7 billion humans sharing a planet, most of us living in relative peace. How did a species who, today, as we face new forms of scarcity, climate change, resource depletion, environmental collapse, we stand at the same crossroads our ancestors faced 14,000 years ago? The same pressures that drove those first communities to war are building again. Rising seas will displace millions. Changing weather patterns will make some regions uninhabitable while transforming others. Resources that entire civilizations depend on may simply disappear. The bones at Jebel Sahaba are a warning from the deep past. They remind us that when faced with scarcity, humans have always had two choices: share what remains, or fight for what's left. Our ancestors made their choice. The evidence lies buried in the ground, a testament to what happens when cooperation fails. The question that echoes across 14,000 years of human history is simple: what choice will we make? The first war ever fought wasn't about glory or conquest. It wasn't about religion or ideology. It was about survival in a world that suddenly didn't have enough for everyone. As you go about your daily life, surrounded by abundance, remember those first warriors lying in the dust of prehistory. Remember that the choice between cooperation and conflict isn't ancient history. It's the choice we make every single day. What choice will you make? The story of human warfare is still being written. Every archaeological discovery adds new chapters to our understanding of who we are and where we came from. If this journey through deep time has sparked your curiosity about humanity's hidden past, subscribe to join us as we continue exploring the moments that made us human. What other secrets lie buried in the archaeological record? What other choices shaped the species we became? The answers are waiting to be discovered.